Before we get going, let me tell you what I think this event is about, and say something about what does it mean more broadly, and finally say something about what does it mean for ERF. What is this event all about? Every time you go for dinner in Egypt with your friends or non-friends and the issue of the private sector comes up, immediately you get a split. You get people who think that the private sector is sucking your blood, and you get people who tell you that the private sector is the only way you can make progress. And interestingly enough, at the end of an evening with a long discussion, neither party changed their mind. Everybody stays where they started from. So this whole idea of what is the role of the private sector in development is never a clean one. In fact, if I may just tell you a little bit about the history of Egypt, during Nasser time, private sector was seen as the really source of all evils, if you like. And then came a time when they became they played an important role, but they were also seen as the whales, the sharks, the jaws, the ones that really eat you alive, sort of thing. And then the government all the time keeps on saying, no, that the private sector can't do it without you. And there are all sorts of concessions, all sorts of this and that. So it's never a clean relationship. The problem with that way of discussing the issue, though, is that it's all anecdotal. It's all based on ideology. It's all based on people's prior predilections, if you like. And that's really bad news, because we never make progress. The only way to understand this issue better is to begin to analyze it, understand it, provide a framework, get some data, do something sensible about it based on some prior thinking and prior framing of the issues. This event is fundamentally about that. It's about the state-business relation, but it's about the state-business relation not in a way similar to the dinner chat in Egypt or elsewhere. It's based on thinking critically. It's about understanding really what's behind it, the rationality, the evidence that supports one way of behaving versus another. So this is not an event about taking positions neither for the private sector nor against the private sector. It's an event about understanding that complicated relationship between business and government anywhere. Last night over dinner, one of the journalists was asking me, but you know, the private sector, even in developed countries, even in the US, they probably will have a similar chat like the one we have in Egypt. Well, I made the point, counterpoint, if you like, that, well, look, the political setup in the US is a very different political setup from the one we have in Egypt or we have in different countries in the region. And therefore, the nature of that relationship is not the same. It may be similar in essence, but we are not talking about broad statements, unbounded here. We are talking about understanding of relationships in a particular context, given a nature of a political regime. That's what this event is about. So if we leave the room at the end of tomorrow, and have a better understanding of that relationship, we have some evidence that supports one view or another, or have conclusions about the outcome is likely to be this under these conditions, I think we would have done what we need to do. So this is what this event is all about, and it really is important to set up things in their own context before you get into plunging into the water, sort of. You have to understand things first and then get into the details of it. Second point I want to make is, as a young economist, I always thought that the best way is to be a good carpenter. I mean, you just sharpen your tools and you learn your tricks and this and that. And as progressively over time, as I grew a bit older, I began to realize that, you know what, it's not about optimal pricing in utilities under peak and off-peak conditions. That's just ridiculous. I mean, it is not. The fact of the matter is, as soon as you begin to do your economizing and begin to come up with your optimal solution first, second, under distortions, that's when economists really went out of their way. Your solution is going to be constrained and the outcome will be different in a certain way. Well, the economists are living in their own little bubble, if you like. The more I got older, the more I realized that politics is really the main driver of almost everything. It is the interaction between politics and economics that makes a difference. I remember in one of the events that we organized for ERF, we were searching for our soul in terms of doing something about firm dynamics and industrial policy. And what is it? How can you get structural transformation and get the government to play an important role in an intelligent way rather than in a dumb way and waste resources? And we had in the room, that was a 2 days workshop in Cairo, and we had Jim Robinson in the room. And we had people commenting in all sorts of ways. And every time he opened his mouth, he said, no, but the politics of this is. There was nothing that was said for a day and a half other than politics is behind anything that you see. I told him, you know what, Jim, I mean, I could have saved you the trip because I could have said on your behalf that it's politics stupid. It's not economic stupid as was advertised in the US in the Bill Clinton election. So politics is really behind everything. And I think the idea of understanding, doing work on economics, abstracted from politics, is just being too narrow and probably not very useful, to tell you the truth. So what we are doing here, in my view, is part of a growing trend in the economics profession, where any thinking in pure economics is not going to be as productive as when you introduce either politics or institutions or what have you. I mean, things outside the markets, essentially. And then the last comment I want to make before I give the floor to Isha and then to Melanie is ERF and the role of ERF in that exercise. For a very long period of time, we have done a lot of work in lots of fields of economics since '93. And then came the Arab Spring. Once in a while, you get one lost soul here or there writing you a paper that kind of links politics and economics, but never systematically. Until we had the so-called Arab Spring, and then the spring is upon us until now. And we decided that this is a political transformation, understanding politics and this and that became really fundamental. And it needs to be it needs to take a focus, become a focal point or take the focus that it does deserve. And as part of the cumulative work we have been doing for the past, 6 years or something, we have initiated that sustained work on the political economy of the transition and political economy, understanding political economy from many angles. And our hero, in my view, is Isha Diwan. I was really delighted. I'm grateful for Isha for really taking the lead on that theme. I think he, among all thematic leaders, he was the one who was most entrepreneurial. He's the one who surprised me all the time. It's very difficult to surprise people, but he always managed to surprise me, which is something that makes my day, sort of, and my year and my years, in fact. So thanks, Ihab.